All right. I believe this means we are live. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, tech fans of all shapes and sorts and sizes and persuasions, welcome to another episode of the Monday Morning Tech Chat Show on the SGGQA podcast channel. I'm Juan Carlos Bagnell, aka Some Gadget Guy, the SGG of this terribly named podcast series. But the QA, that's the important part, obviously stands for question and answer. We like to make this an interactive conversation on our Monday mornings, and it's why I like to kick off my week with a show and a stream like this. It gives us a little chance to kind of sort out our feelings on the week before us. Maybe some news broke over the weekend. Maybe we're just really looking forward to some massive events coming up later in the week, and we get to kind of play those conversations out. We get to kind of feel our feelings in a chat full of incredible techies that I'm already seeing in the chat here. You're gonna have to pardon. I did way too much talking last week, completely blew my voice out, and but I couldn't not do today's show. So there will be lots of interruptions, pausing, me coughing, trying to avoid like clearing my throat all over the microphone. It's already starting. I can already feel it. But for right now, I'm gonna try and keep my smooth jazz voice going. A little less intensity, but trust me, the feels are still there. So it's just less volume, same feels. You know, like tastes great, less filling. Hey folks, I'm seeing some great faces in the chat, some great names. Arthur Lee saying Q&A doesn't mean Quest and Android. What? I feel like this has been completely missold to a huge chunk of the population. Pup on Tech, the coughing cast we've been waiting for. We got J-Man 150, we got Gabaletta, we got the Lambit, we got H2O Taku, we got Kapakash, Ron Guido, Gwendolyn giving a wave and a shining star. No matter who you are, we got Jonky, we got Jojo the Techie, we got Scoop, we got Lampros Bros, and Alsa Bockley. And Pup on Tech following it up. I hope you feel better. And Simon says Hypno with a timely, merry time zone to all. J-Man, see, there I go. J-Man 150, I will absolutely be staying a bit more hydrated as I take my first slurp of water for this podcast, and I'll try not to ASMR that for people like me. I tell you, as I get older, the misophonia just gets worse and worse and worse. And there are so many podcasts that I've stopped listening to. Especially like the casual, like shows that I used to love where casual friends hanging out. And then for some reason, a lot of those shows will just kind of open up the audio or maybe they're just doing less editing. And then they're like, oh, hey, sorry guys, just, while I'm on the stream, I've got to eat. And you can mute your, see, watch. I'm going to take another drink of water. And if you can't hear it, it's because I muted my microphone. Ready? Here, check this out. Ready? This is magic. And none of that is going to be on the audio feed. Instead, I've got folks like, oh, I'm so hungry, but I'm joining this live stream. Let me lean into my broadcast quality microphone while I like chew up a cheeseburger, because that's exactly what I want to hear. I love it, right? That makes a podcast. So yeah, Capoletta. I can't stand when streamers just eat while on stream. I can't handle it. TK and I have joked so many times about taking a conversation to like one of our favorite ramen spots, and I love hanging out with TK. TK and I are kind of foodies. We love going to very similar restaurants, and he's hit me to a couple really cool places, and I've shared some of my favorite spots with him too. But the reason why I think I always manage to fail at setting up something like, eating and talking, mukbangy, whatever, is I know I would never be able to listen to, edit, or republish audio with me with food in my mouth. I can barely stand the sound of my own voice, which is hilarious considering the job that I have. But adding noodles on top of that is just a complete no-go. So we have a jam-packed show. We have a lot of news that I think is really interesting to kind of dig into. We've got some gadget talk that I want to reserve for the second half of the podcast. And I mean, just to start us off too. First of all, the salutations is I hope everybody had a lovely weekend. Here in North America, we were celebrating Mother's Day. My daughter is 8, and she's really into the culture of greeting cards. She loves getting them. She loves designing her own. She drew up. Dang it! I couldn't get to the mute button in time. Sorry, I felt that one coming, and I was like, no, I can wait. So that's one. That's one cough. Let's keep a tally on how many throat clearings and coughs actually make it on stream. But she wrote out this wonderful Mother's Day card, but she also just on her own was like, no, we got to kind of make this Mother's Day weekend. So the entire weekend was just stuff that my wife wanted to do. Saturday we spent all day, all afternoon just kind of hanging out at the pool, nice and chill. Sunday morning she got lit up, and we were like, "Hey, we're going on a hike." And Lex and I were like, "Heck yes, we are." And then Lex and Marie and I, we just went on like a 4 mile hike that morning. It was really lovely. Lots of baking. It was funny, like instead of like a fancy brunch or some kind of like nice dinner, Marie turns to me and like, "Hey, it's been a week and I'm really tired. Do you think you could just do up some brats?" Like, yes, I can. So I did a beer boil. We still don't have a proper grill. I have this lovely back patio. We're still renovating it. Like, there's so much work that needs to be done to this condo, and it's like every time we get ahead on one thing, we realize, oh, there are like three things we need to fix before we can do that one thing we really wanted to do. So we still don't have a grill, but I set out like a skillet on our stovetop, and I'm just like, boiling the brats and throwing them on. There's sauerkraut aplenty. It was a really lovely weekend. So if you were celebrating, or if there was someone special in your life that you wanted to sort of celebrate, I hope you had a lovely weekend and you had time to kind of engage in those celebrations. I'm always down for a party, any excuse for festivities or a shindig. So hopefully, you and your family were able to do something similar. Yeah, Pop on Tech, she is so cute. Like, you look at the holiday industry. Oh well, you've got to give gifts, and oh, this is a Mother's Day, and this is like a Father's Day, and there are all these other like happy affection day, and you're like, okay, well, this is nonsense. But then you see it through the eyes of an 8-year-old who loves seeing the look on someone's face when she gives them something that she made. And it is totally self-serving because it's not just sort of a pure altruism. She's an 8-year-old. She likes the thrill of people showering her with affection because she showered them with affection. Again, I feel like this is going to be a very common theme for kids that sort of were younger during the pandemic. But it is absolutely adorable, and it kind of like shines a different light on greeting cards. Where I walk down aisles of greeting cards and I kind of roll my eyes and I get really cynical, and you're like, oh well, my wife knows that I care about her, and you're like, you know what? Writing out a little note, writing out a little letter. No, it's kind of fun. I like it too. Oh, Arthur, you have a 3-strike limit on coughs. Okay, well, hold on. Let me take a quick pause. Haha, I felt that one coming and stopped it in time. And McCorcoran's asking, Juan, you got that Nothing Neckband Pro that El Jefe covered a week or two ago. So I took my eye off the ball. That was high on my list. I desperately want to take that neckband for a spin. I was looking for it. I saw the initial announcement. It wasn't shipping in our region. I didn't want to have to try and import it. And then like I let 2 weeks go by. And then LFA has a video out on it. It's so messed up. It's so not fair. But I would heartily recommend everybody check out El Jefe's video on that because he's my go-to for Bluetooth audio. I am an audio snob. I am an audiophile. I wear those badges proudly. I come from a background in voiceover recording, and I really care what goes into my ears. And he was responsible for getting me back on track with Bluetooth audio. So if there's any higher praise I can deliver, catch his video. And if I can get my hands on him, I absolutely will chat about him too. But this is also shaping up to be a busier summer than I was expecting. So I've got some stuff coming to the channel, and I'm still under embargo on some really annoying things. But I might not be able to get to them. Or if I do, it'll be probably something really pithy, like real short, a write-up on the Patreon or something like that. Gabaletta, this is lovely. Yesterday, I took my partner to wherever she wanted, bought her a bunch of scented candles, food, and ended the night with a movie she wanted to watch as a family. I think that sounds lovely. That sounds like a brilliant, brilliant way to spend a Mother's Day. Yeah, Simon says Hypno. Jeff is digging in everyone's pockets, man. Evil Jefe. Yeah, he's good like that. That's why we like Jeff. That's why we keep him around. He's like me. He enjoys spending other people's money. So that's good times. Let me tell you, when you know that you've motivated someone to like part with some cash and you're like, I got you. I got you. It's good times. So let's knock out a little housekeeping. It didn't feel like it while I was going through the week, but last week was actually a pretty busy week. And it's one of the reasons why I'm coming in so rough right now, so low voice energy. All right, I'm going to screen share this. I don't do a lot of shorts, but this one kind of fit together where it really wasn't worth a whole video, and it ended up being about a minute. So instead of doing a proper video, I turned it into a vertical. Xiaomi 14, my camera lens fogs up too. I was really dumb in my initial sort of review period, that sort of early review period on the Xiaomi 14, because I got a lot of notes from people saying, hey, we're having these issues. Xiaomi has apparently had this kind of camera QA issue for a couple generations. And every time I hear about it, I think, oh, well, that's kind of a bummer. But for me, the big temperature change, I keep my phone on an AC vent. And, you know, when you're driving around Southern California and it's 110 degrees out in the valley, the biggest temperature change you face is where the AC is blowing on the phone directly because of the vent. And then you take it out and there's that like 35 or 40 degree swing. And sometimes you can get a phone to fog up, but to me, that's not indicative of like an actual lifestyle problem. Different lens manufacturers can make weather sealed lenses and they're more resistant to fogging. You get some inexpensive kit lenses for a DSLR or mirrorless, and those will probably fog if they experience a significant and sudden change in temperature. So it's not something I've really worked into my Xiaomi coverage because I didn't think like, it's not something I could test appropriately in a more lifestyle kind of condition. And then someone went, hey, doofus, to get a good temperature swing, you know, while the phone's running hot, you could just put it in the freezer. And then I went, oh, I'm kind of slow, but I eventually get there. And so I did this with my Xiaomi 14. This is the little Xiaomi 14. It's not the Ultra. I honestly don't know if the Ultra is going to be any different in terms of this type of weather sealing or issue with condensation, but I fired up the camera, got it running a little warm, you know, a couple minutes of 4K video, put it in there, and wouldn't you know it, mine fogged up too. So it's something that I feel needs to be addressed as these are increasingly expensive devices, and it's not as common an issue as I feel the few responses you can find from Xiaomi make it sound like, oh, well, you know, this is a thing that happens sometimes. Well, I also put a Pixel 8 Pro, a Vivo X100, and my OnePlus 12 in the freezer with my Xiaomi 14. And you might guess what the results of that were. So you can catch that. It's just like a little minute of video just kind of showing what my experiences were. Then also on the channel, I got to finally get this video out, the Ceremon Blink 500 B2 Plus. It's a terrible name. These were not the mics that totally failed on us last week. In fact, if I had been wearing these mics, I would have been anxious because they don't have backup recording, but I don't think it would have been a problem for the actual stream. So the Ceremon Blink 500 B2 Plus are the least expensive wireless microphones that I've ever reviewed. They come only in a two transmitter to one receiver configuration. So it's not like the Rode Wireless Go now has an option for a single transmitter and a receiver, or a dual transmitter and a receiver. It's two microphones and a receiver, and they're incredibly flexible. The Blinks are, the Ceremonics. And right now, I don't know that this is the full MSRP. I think this is a sale price. Right now, you can pick them up for 130 bucks. So I have not found a less expensive way to cut the microphone cable and have a good, with good line of sight, a good wireless audio transmission. Super flexible. You can connect them to two devices at the same time if you go with the line out and with the USB-C. And they have this little USB plug system where you can pop off an adapter. So I've got a full review on those. This was kind of special for me because TK and I have been talking a lot behind the scenes on medium-sized channels like ours. We have a lot of conversations with smaller manufacturers, especially companies that don't do a ton of their own marketing. But as they try to get press, as they try to get coverage for their products, there's been this really annoying trend of companies sending out prototype hardware. It's not the finished consumer release, or it's missing a firmware update, or sometimes it's just like a brown unlabeled box. Like, we can't even show you what the retail packaging might look like. Sony used to do this a lot. We would get Xperias that had like non-functional cellular radios. And so I'm trying to review the phone, but I'm not reviewing it. You look at so many of my Sony videos, very few of them actually say review, because I don't feel it's appropriate to review prototypes. That's not what the consumer experience is going to be. So Ceremonic sent over some mics, and I was really stoked. Like, this is a company that internationally, they sell a decent number of mics. Like, this could be kind of fun to check out. They sent me a prototype that did not work at all. They were noisy, they were hissy. They would not connect to any of my Android devices, even though they had a USB-C plug. It was not good. And unfortunately, my video probably lost out on traffic because it was way later than the sort of embargo reveal. But I'm glad I waited, because there was no way I would have been able to make an actual review. And now that I can see what the retail product can really do, I'm much more excited to talk about those mics. These are legit options for people that you're at a price point once you start getting to around 100 bucks where it kind of makes sense for these to be in your arsenal just for like little family videos. Something I've been trying to make a bit more of the conversation about is like talking to your grandparents. Well, if you set up like a broadcast mic and you shove it in your grandmother's face, and maybe you've got a camera on her, you want to try and record some of her life history for the posterity of the family, whatever, that's a big hurdle. And a lot of people get kind of wigged out by that. And then if they're moving around, because maybe your grandparents aren't media trained, you're not going to get a good recording of that. So it's a lot of effort for sometimes a kind of mediocre result. But if you can hook something like this up where they're free to move around, there's just this little like communicator badge on their shirt, and you can record that way. It is so much more discreet. It is so much, and it's clearer because it's the audio stays with them. No matter where they move around, you get a better audio. So especially for things like family videos, these little wireless microphones are coming in clutch, and they can be a huge upgrade from camera perspective audio. And I've got some samples of what that's kind of like. I do audio recordings in the Gadget Lab, and then I do some walk and talk vlogging just like out in the hills, and an audio test of the noise reduction out by a busy freeway. So it's a pretty solid little setup. The idea of prosumer audio is now starting to crack that $100 ceiling that I think makes them easier impulse buys, where a $100 microphone even a couple years ago would have required a lot more infrastructure. So I've got a full review on those. Those came in pretty cool. I'm gonna get a drink of water here real quick. And Malik, I've played with a few other. I'm actually on a Ceremonic right now. I'm on the Blink Me. Malik says, these sound like an upgrade to the Ceremonic B1 Blink I got. Definitely have to look into this. And what I think is kind of cool is I don't think the 500 B2 Plus are a substantial upgrade over other Rode, DJI, even the Jobby mic is pretty good. What I think is really exciting about the 500 is it brings a lot of the sort of Rode Wireless Go 1 experience down to a lower price point. So your B1 Blink might be comparable, but just over the time between the B1 and the B2, what we've seen is bringing a level of technology down in price. Excuse me. Like these are cheaper than a premium tier pair of wireless earbuds for a dual microphone system. That I mean, again, like you don't have to be a content creator to then also go, oh well, I can just clip this on someone, plug this into my phone, and then the audio gets way better. Like that to me is the kind of ease of use in prosumer that's really exciting. Because if I talk about professional audio, I need field mixing, recording kit, I need, AAA batteries, I need different types of lavalier mics, the body packs, everything gets a lot more complicated for a reason. But now, it's why so many of my videos, I don't even bring out the microphone I have on a boom arm here. I actually have to clean the foam sock that I have on my SM57. I can't use that SM57 because the second I get it in front of my face, I'm just going to inhale months worth of dust. And I don't want to do that. So anyway, Ceremonic Blink 500 B2 Plus review, that is live. And then also, this one was kind of exciting, the TicWatch Pro 5 Enduro, a small refresh to a nice Wear OS watch. This is not a TicWatch 6. In fact, the watch is buzzing on my desk. It would help if I turn the mic back on after I cough. Pop on Tech says, what are you on right now? I'm on the Blink Me. So that's their little puck clip-on microphone. I'm trying to show you, but my camera keeps readjusting as I sit up. It's the little wireless wireless OLED screen. So it's like a little smartwatch screen for controlling all of the features on the mic. And then it's a 2 transmitter, 1 receiver kind of setup. And they're pretty solid. I've been using these on most of the live streams. I save my Rhodes for more recorded content. I like the features on the Rode I like better for recording. The features on the Blink Me I like better for streaming. I'm getting very granular. I don't think people need to worry that much about what they get. But I get persnickety because I've been living in audio production land since I was 17. So it's been a while. Ooh, Pup on Tech, that could be fun. I would love a short audio cleanup tutorial on the Patreon for both a decent microphone and bad phone mics from some gadget guy. Using something like Audacity. We could definitely, that's what my living used to be. I used to be some audio guy before I was some gadget guy. So, TicWatch Pro 5 Enduro, this is not a TicWatch 6. So, a lot of my TicWatch Pro 5 review is basically the same here. But the Enduro has a few little updates and a few little hardware differences. This is the first watch that's running sort of the revised Tic apps, which I have to believe will come to the regular TicWatch Pro 5. But over the TicWatch Pro 5, the outer screen, the casing, whoops, as I fail to unlock my watch there, the outer screen is now sapphire crystal instead of Gorilla Glass. And the crown has a new sort of, there's like a spring give. So on the TicWatch Pro 5, I feel the crown sticks out in such a way where even if I'm wearing the watch past my wrist bone, when I go to do push-ups, I can activate the crown on my TicWatch Pro 5. This is supposed to alleviate some of that. So as your wrist bends and the skin kind of pushes up against the crown, there's a little bit of a give, and you have to be a bit more forceful into the click. I can still turn this on with push-ups. So when my wrist is in sort of an exaggerated angle because I'm doing, like push-ups or workout, something like that, it still clicks the crown. That to me is kind of annoying. I wish we could have an offset crown like my OnePlus watch that still had the dial that the Tick watch has. But there's obviously more to talk about, and then just I share some thoughts on kind of the state of Wear OS in that video too. So you can catch that somegadgetguy.com, or of course on the YouTube channel, or if you want to watch it in higher res on the Patreon. Really, really good. I'm desperate to see if TicWatch will hang in there. They're just starting to get some rumors out, not rumors, just starting to talk about getting a beta out for Wear OS 4, which would update the TicWatch Pro 5, and I think it might also go down to the TicWatch like E3. Ron Guido, my answer would be to not do push-ups. Best way to not hit the crown on your TicWatch, just don't do the push-ups. I know this is like a fitness activity outdoor rugged watch, but maybe just don't do any of that. And Simon says Hypno says the SE Electronics Dynacaster DCM8 is a cracker of a mic. I have had glorious experiences with SE. SE does not get enough rep here in North America. They're a lot more popular in the UK and in the EU, and they're a mic brand that I think kind of deserve, especially for their more traditional studio grade mics, I think they deserve to be toe to toe with Rode. I think so many of, dang it, that's two. So many of those classic microphone manufacturers, unfortunately, fell into the trap of just making cheap, disposable consumer recording gear. And I kind of look at like what happened to Blue microphones. You probably forget, or you maybe never knew, they made these stunning studio condensers. The Bluebird, the Bottle. I had the Kiwi. That was a $2,000 multi-pattern large diaphragm condenser, and it was delicious. I loved that mic. And then they found all this success with like the Icicle and the Snowball and the Yeti. And now they're a subsidiary of, I forget who bought them out. Was it Logitech? I don't know. So it's really sad. SE has held to their roots. I think Rode has done a really good job. I miss that Rode used to put out mics like the Classic. So the Rode Classic is this gorgeous, again, just warm and distorty and rich tube microphone that comes in its own flight case. And I've got one. I just don't get to use it in the office very often because it's built for a really well-treated studio. Yeah, Logitech did buy Blue. So it's just sad. SE Electronics has held to making some great recording gear in both the professional and in the prosumer space. Rode, AKG is still making some good stuff. Audio Technica. Who am I missing? I mean, obviously Sennheiser and Neumann. But yeah, sorry. I can go on. You get me started about audio, and it's like coming home again. And unfortunately, I don't think my Fanfare of Glory is gonna work. Oh, dang. Well, Mr. Pup on Tech gifted a tier 1 sub to Tangential Tesseract and J-Man 150. And apparently there's a hype train now running on the Twitch. So I thank you so much for supporting the production. I'm going to try and get it to play. Here, I'll just turn my speakers up way high, and I'll annoy the neighbors. As dopey as that was, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. And again, it's that kind of support that helps keep the show running and the podcast going and the videos cranking and the Patreon and everything else too. So Pup on Tech, thank you very much. That's greatly appreciated. And Simon Says Hypno also subscribed to Prime, subscribed for 35 months, and we have crested Hype Train level 1. One more, just for kicks. I'm gonna blow my ears out doing Fanfares of Glory. I love it. Maybe I'll put in some nice earbuds or something just to kind of take some of the edge off. I know, Kapakash. One more cough and I'm out. I'm definitely going to be coughing more on the stream. I'm sorry. I would really like to not have that happen. A couple other housekeepy things that I do want to point out. What helped contribute to kind of blowing my voice out. Obviously, TK and I do a show every Thursday called Best of Our Week. But over the last week, I've had two just stunning, lovely conversations, excuse me, with some brilliant podcasters. Last week, I could have mentioned it. I didn't realize that the show was already out. I thought we had pre recorded for a later publishing, so I should have mentioned this last Monday. But the folks over at the phone show with Steve and Ted were kind enough to have me on, and it turns out I was their guest for episode 800. Steve Litchfield, dang it, Steve Litchfield and Ted Salmon, 800 episodes, and I got to be their guest to talk about I was like 1+12 stuff, some photography, Pixel 8 Pro. We were mentioning a bunch of videos, like we were talking about Scary if Literal's experiences with foldables. Like it was, first of all, they're just charming gents, and I love talking to them. But I like there are only so many hours in the week that I can consume audio. I fell behind on Steve's show, completely missed. He made it to episode 800, and I got to be a part of that, which is just incredible. This is what we talk about when we say, like, hey, go out there and help support your favorite content creators. Like, I think Steve is kind of in a semi-retired, place. Like, he's not working the gadget review angle like he used to years and years and years ago, but he's still putting out a banger of a podcast, and he's still bringing on incredible guests to talk about cool tech. And that's the kind of stuff that doesn't get bumped by algorithms. That's the stuff that doesn't get pushed unless people literally put it on their own social media and send it to their friends and say, hey, this was a cool episode. Just for the show in general, whether or not, because they just published episode 801. So if you want to help them out, what I would say is you want to try and help share the most current episode of a topical news podcast like that. So I'm not even trying to get you to promote me. I'm trying to get you to promote Steve and Ted. Similarly, oh, and George, what's up, George? George his ears must have been burning. We were just talking about mics and home recording, and George Whittam, if you're in Southern California, is the number one resource for like setting up the top tier home studio resource and voiceover. He's again a lovely human being. Again, we haven't chatted in so long, but I miss the conversations we used to have, especially when you were running your show, and just a great resource with the technical chops to really back up. It's nice when you talk to someone and you get the sense that they really know what they're talking about when it comes to something as a technical art like recording, because it's a lot of tech, but at the end you also need to create some art. So George is a good dude. Just following up another podcast experience yesterday, these guys hosted their show on Mother's Day. I think that was incorrect, but they're lovely people too, and I jumped in on their podcast also. The Nomad Tech Project with Sam and Joe. Sam's just been a buddy of mine for a long time. Joe and I have been friends for a bit too. And because I can't shut up for their hour-long podcast, we ended up running an hour 40, which is also why my voice is in pretty weak shape right now, and why I will pause my mic again to drink a little bit more water. Truer. Dang it. Hold on. Okay. Sorry, I thought I was coming back, and then my voice went, no, 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 no. You can't talk just yet. Barry, it was a fun stream. And Simon, truer words, my friends. Sam and Joe are good lads. Real good folks. I, of course, got stupid and political, and they were gracious enough to kind of let me ramble on a bit while soapboxing. So, there is a ton of audio and video and articles and written pieces and stuff to consume just around the tech scene. And I appreciate folks that kind of enjoy sitting through some of those conversations with me, because I know we've got a lot of cross-pollination on a lot of these podcasts. So when I see folks in the audience here, I know a lot of them are also making their own cool stuff too. So I really like that we're kind of creating a network that contributes to these different discussions in a way that I think is a bit more meaningful. So all of the news, all of the housekeeping, everything that we're going to be talking about this week, you'll be able to find on the show notes, somegadgetguy.com, and of course on the replay. There's going to be the replay on Twitch and the audio replay on any podcast service that you might want to find. And of course, if you want fewer of those little interruptions and a little bit tighter editing, I do the ad-free version on patreon.com/somegadgetguy. That's, unfortunately, these days, it's most of the questions and conversations and discussions that I actually respond to tend to be on the Patreon or on the Discord, just because social media is a wasteland, which takes us into our first story. This is written up by Ashley Bellinger over at Ars Technica. Am I about to cough? I was about to cough. Okay. Elon Musk's X can't invent its own copyright law, judge says. From the beginning of the article, U.S. District Judge William Alsup has dismissed Elon Musk's X Corp lawsuit against BrightData, a data scraping company accused of improperly accessing X, formerly Twitter, systems and violating both X terms and state laws when scraping and selling data. This is a critical story to pay attention to. Now, if you're like me and you don't like that Elon Musk took your favorite social media platform and ruined it and turned it into a place to re-platform white supremacists and fascists and pay them for disseminating awful, awful, awful content and harassing people and just really turning what was a funky place to have fun conversations into an utter wasteland of misinformation and terrible, terrible posts. You also take glee anytime you see something about Elon Musk and Twitter facing some kind of challenge. It's the schadenfreude of billionaire man baby who should have just shut up and not messed with a system or a platform that he was incapable of running effectively. Again, because of Twitter, I now don't believe any of this like genius, eccentric genius nonsense that the media has created around Elon Musk. I think he's just a rich kid who got sort of an unfair advantage because his dad owned an emerald mine in Africa, and we all have to suffer his terrible business decisions on multiple platforms, on multiple fronts. I want you all to read up Ashley's write-up on this. Like, I'm not going to read through a ton of this article. This judgment sets up a very interesting legal precedent. Twitter's terms of service and some state law don't seem to supersede our current inadequate copyright protections. So a company, despite Twitter's terms of service, can go into Twitter and start scraping information off of Twitter to then sell to other companies, like maybe an AI company. This is a very nuanced and very complicated decision. Now, the specifics of this apply mostly to the argument that Twitter was making as it related to their own terms of service. So this is not going to be precedent that will be universally adopted tomorrow that, oh, well, this one judge said that this company couldn't be stopped from scraping Twitter, so that means we can scrape everything. That's not what's happening here. But this is a legal decision that sets a precedent that other companies can start examining for other social media. So let's say the terms of service on Instagram are inadequate to protect the content from a third party source from going in and scraping the content on Instagram. That's how we're going to run into incredible complexity and ridiculous challenges in doing things like protecting copyright. I would prefer that my content not be used to train AI models. But I also know anything that I share on a platform like Instagram is basically just getting chewed up by Meta. So I'm very selective in what I share on Instagram. I'm making a business decision to keep a photo or two a month going to Instagram so I just don't completely disappear from Facebook's algorithm. I know Facebook now owns those photos. They're not mine anymore. I don't have any control over them. Whatever Facebook decides to do with them, or dump them into an AI shredder or sell them off to other companies, they're out of my hands. But I also don't share photos of my daughter in any recognizable sense anymore on any social media platform for the same reasons. I believe her likeness should be hers to decide what she wants to do with it and shouldn't be accessible to a third party company that can just go and scrape Twitter. So, this one is messy. This one is delicious and crazy and weird, and it's a headline that's kind of gotten buried in the news cycle. This can have profound implications for how we do business with social media companies as the actual users providing the fuel of data that runs their service, and how other companies might be able to now look at this and say, oh, well, because of this and this and this, we actually do have a way to get in and get data that we would have before had to pay for. If it's published in this way, if it's publicly accessible, if the terms of service say this, and if the state law where we do business and they do business say that, they can't stop us. You know, that Google deal of 60 million a year to get all the data off Reddit, and now Reddit's search results are skyrocketing, definitely doesn't seem like any quid pro quo happening there, Google. Maybe Google didn't even need to spend the 60 million a year. If Reddit is publicly available for that kind of data tracking, this judgment might empower another company to go, well, we want that data too. And we don't have 60 million a year to give you, so why don't we just take it? And then you'll have to fight us in court. And then we can point to this judgment against Twitter and say, wow, I mean, it's a publicly available resource. What are we going to do? Simon says, Hypno, AI models trained by supremacists and conspiracy theorists. Yay. And don't forget Grok. So you'll have an AI model trained by one of the worst AI models trained on some of the worst user data on Twitter too. That's awesome. There was a video that Dave on the Patreon shared. I think it was Dave Burns. How maybe we've already gotten to sort of peak language learning model. Like, of course, things can always be refined and models can be tweaked, and we're going to see a whole bunch of companies racing to have an AI play, even though AI is already kind of becoming a rug pull. But like the order of magnitude more processing power it's going to require to train up the next generation of models and services is completely unfeasible. Like, it's a completely unsustainable business model. OpenAI is probably going to be getting in trouble. I think it was OpenAI who just deleted a whole ton of records on how they trained up their last model. And they're like, oh, well, I guess you just can't see if we used it on a whole bunch of public data. Oh, darn. And you're like, that sounds illegal. Like, you just deleted all the stuff that would inform us on how you ripped off a bunch of copyrighted material. Well, I guess you just can't. It's not illegal if you have no evidence, I guess. So there you go. The other, what was the other? There was another story out about something like that too. I can't remember now. It was in my brain and it just jumped out of my brain. George Hayes saying, "Very cool decision regarding your daughter. Completely agree with you." I grew up at a time, and my wife grew up at a time where every waking moment was not detailed by our parents, and we just wanted to give our daughter the same opportunity. She can decide for herself when she's a little bit older how she would like to interact on social media and what kind of presence she would like to have, and her friends won't have 10 years of like family photos to like bully her with. And kids are vile. So, giving her like a cloaking machine. If she wants it, she's got it. If she wants to be more public, she can do it. But she sees what I do for a living, and we've had a lot of conversations about, well, Daddy, why do people say mean things about you on the internet? And then I have to explain to her, well, your daddy kind of poop posts from time to time, and unfortunately, it's kind of a tactic. So sometimes I'm asking for it. Oh, Pup on Tech. I mean, we're deep into this cycle too, aren't we? This is a great comment. Pup on Tech says, the AI stuff I use seems to get worse every version. They seem to just be eating each other's trash in a self-perpetuating loop. At some point, if you don't have a healthy, fresh influx of human data, these models don't get better. And when I mean get better, excuse me, this is still a very surface level facsimile of how speech and information is processed. But look at all of the smaller websites that actually fuel the internet with information and research and commentary and editorial and reviews, and how many of them are getting decimated as Google ratchets their search results. This is something we've been talking about on YouTube for years. And now we're starting to see the pain point of this hit the web writ large. This is disastrous. My blog traffic has basically evaporated. I didn't run a huge blog, but I was getting hundreds, sometimes a couple thousand views a day. Now it's kind of a big day if I get like 50 views if I don't publish something new. If I publish something new, I get a little spike in traffic, and then it immediately vanishes. So all the people that used to like follow up on actual websites, instead, when they search for something, my data just shows up in a search result. There is no incentive to click on a link to go to where that data originated from, because Google and Bing and all these other data AI brokers can just rip off my information. And so, yeah, unfortunately, that means I'm publishing first and foremost on Patreon and paywalling it just so that there's some buffer. So if you want to read what's actually going on, unfortunately, I have to point you to the Patreon first. And then from there, I eventually bring that stuff out to somegadgetguy.com. But if I just put it on somegadgetguy.com, it's gone in an hour. Like, that's the only spike in traffic I'm going to get. So yeah, sorry, shorts are incredibly long. Please read that article. Again, Ars Technica doing great journalism. I love Ashley Bellinger's work. And then also, this is an incredibly important decision to keep an eye on for the future of web content traffic and AI. This is not an AI story, but this judge's decision could have a profound impact on how we treat the data you contribute to a platform. And what rights or responsibilities does the platform have to protect your data? This is a very nuanced legal discussion. And unfortunately, a lot of the people having this conversation right now are not serious people. Elon Musk is making arguments that we should be in support of if we care about privacy and security and protecting copyright and all that other stuff. But he is not a serious man. to kind of coin a phrase from Succession, this is not a serious man. This is not a serious individual. Pup on Tech, this is a great question, and I would love to hear some replies in the chat. Do you guys use an alternate search engine? At this point, I just add Reddit to the end of 95% of my search. I tried Kagi and DuckDuckGo, but wasn't particularly impressed. For a long time, I was really fronting Bing. I liked Bing. And then also Bing would sort of pay you to use Bing. So if you're going to get reasonably close searches to what Google does, you might as well do that too. I need to look it up. Right now, I've been looking more at alternative front ends to Google and Bing. If they're dang it, that's strike three. There are GitHub projects that replace the front user experience on Google, and I'm trying to see if there's a way to use a project like that to kind of get back to an old school style of what Google used to deliver. And so there are some interesting projects that are heading up that kind of work. So I'm still technically using Google, but it's sort of like a different front end for YouTube. It kind of cuts out some of the garbage. It manipulates some of the structure of how Google delivers search results. And then from there, hopefully you just get to a page of search results instead of a bunch of AI garbage and then a bunch of shopping garbage and then a bunch of affiliate garbage. And then the first real result is like at the bottom of the page before you click to go to the next page. So that's kind of what I'm checking out right now. Dr. Claw saying, I use DuckDuckGo until the results frustrate me for the most part. Barry saying, I need to switch the front end as well, but I do put Reddit at the end of 80% or more of my searches. Oh, and George Whittam, I haven't dug deep into it yet, but I'm going to be playing more. George is saying, have you seen the Arc browser yet? And that is something I think I'm going to have to do a write-up on. My experiences with Arc are super, super shallow, but they've been very positive as a first impression. So I'm kind of anxious to see what else I can do with it. I need to dig a bit deeper. Oh yeah, in Flowtech, this has been super frustrating. I do because I find that Google only gives me search results for only part of my question. And it seems to me like Microsoft has never been great at this, but your search operators and your conditional statements, I was really good at like comma, minus, or, quote, like really crafting a search so that I could get something specific. Now it seems like if I put minus in a phrase or minus in a term, Google instead focuses on giving me what I told it not to search for. And those operators don't seem to condition search reliably anymore, which makes search useless for me. I'm not the guy who's going to ask a casual question Star Trek style to a search engine. I've got every order of operation and search condition like memorized, and that's how I think in terms of crafting a specific result. And now I'm getting garbage. So Google is becoming increasingly useless for any type of practical search. So moving on, let's get a couple more of these out here. This again was just kind of an interesting follow-up editorial from that's strike four. Guitar.com from Emily Swingle. Let me screen share this here real quick. Sweetwater generates revenue out of 2 distribution centers that rival what Guitar Center produces from over 300 stores. Music Trades editor explains why Sam Ash and other guitar retailers can't compete with online stores. I was incredibly sad to see the news that Sam Ash was closing. I don't know how many stores they still had open. But the company on social media shared, it is with a heavy heart that we announce that all Sam Ash store locations will begin store closing sales today. It's a 100-year-old retail chain, and I feel like, so I think they were down to around 45 locations, so around 50 stores. I mean, that's not huge, but that's actually bigger than what I thought Sam Ash still was. So those are all going to be closing out, selling off stock and retail and inventory. And it kind of hit me in the same way that Fry's eventual closure also hit me. So much of my life, I have loved the experience of walking into a brick and mortar tech or brick and mortar recording store and playing with things and checking out gear and shopping components. And as I've gotten older, I've tried to make an effort to put my money on the resources that help to deliver the information. This is super low level stuff, but like there was a time where I would go into a Sam Ash, check out a bunch of gear, then immediately run off to Amazon and price compare, and then see if between Prime and shipping deals, like if I could get it for a couple dollars cheaper, well, I'd buy it from Amazon. And now instead, I really am actively trying to support other businesses that I feel are doing business more appropriately. And even if it means I end up spending a couple dollars more, I'm not just rushing out to Amazon. I'm also trying to condition myself because Marie is still hellbent on canceling Amazon Prime when our year is up. She's done with Amazon. She hates their recent like addition of advertisements to Prime Video. She's done. She is completely checked out, and I gotta respect that because also I mean that's going to be money we save every year, right? Not having an Amazon Prime subscription. So by doing that, I also find like I'm just buying less junk. George Whittam, exactly. Radio Shack, Fry's, now Sam Ash, showrooming kills brick and mortar, same in the bicycle industry. Oh man, and there's this little mom and pop bicycle shop, and George, let me tell you, man, it is so expensive to shop there, but I am not buying bike gear online. I am walking my ass, or actually riding my ass across the street, and I'm going to the little bike shop, and I'm gritting my teeth to spend more just to know like this is a resource. When my bike's going to need a better tune-up than what I can provide, those guys are going to help me out. They're extremely knowledgeable, and I have to pay for that expertise. There is a value now to that kind of business relationship, and I feel like we bought like just water bottle cages 2 weeks ago, and like these are so much more expensive than they need to be. Just like put a water bottle on my daughter's bike, but I'm investing in this local business. So I adored that. And now, like, if I go into a Guitar Center, I just bought my cables again. I just bought my cables again, and I bought them in the Guitar Center. That's something that, like, I would have kicked my own ass over 10 years ago. Why didn't you shop them around? You can get Mogami Gold, and it would have been cheaper, and blah, 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 blah. I just bought AAA batteries, AAA rechargeable batteries. I could not get them at Costco. For some reason, Costco is not stocking AAA rechargeable batteries. So I found some Eneloops, and I was about to push go on Amazon. And then I said, hey, you know what? Let me see if I can find these somewhere else. And B&H, the shipping was longer. It took longer to ship them, but they were $1 cheaper on B&H than I could get them from a reputable spot on Amazon. Well, take my money, B&H. Let's do this. This is awesome. So this is something I'm trying to make more of an effort as a consumer, as a shopper. And then also, I'm not doing a good job of factoring in. Amazon is more convenient, but I'm paying a lot more. And recently, their service has not matched what I'm paying for. And so when they're doing the impoopification of adding commercials to their video streaming, and I don't always get the product in overnight or 2-day shipping that they promised me I would get it overnight or in 2-day, what am I paying for? If I just wait to buy a few things on Amazon, I also find I'm just buying less stuff on Amazon. So these are the little erosions of confidence in Amazon that I feel are a shared experience. I feel a lot of us out there are kind of experiencing something similar. Unfortunately, it's coming too late for companies like Sam Ash. Last time I was in a Sam Ash, it actually wasn't that nice. I am definitely romanticizing my childhood experiences and wishing that that was still what Sam Ash was. So I'm not trying to say like, oh, Sam Ash failed just because of digital and online sales. Sweetwater is a better online retailer than what Sam Ash was. And the last time I was inside a Sam Ash, it was kind of flea markety. It didn't feel like a nice shopping, hands-on, educational experience. So I look at Guitar Center, and there's a Guitar Center not too far from me, and it's not too it's funny. The Guitar Center near me is very close to a Guitar Center office. I don't know if it's like a regional, management office or if it's like a headquarters. I don't think it's a headquarters. But there's a big Guitar Center office building, and then down the road is a Guitar Center store. That Guitar Center store is really nice. It's so close to an office. They keep that as kind of like a show store of what a Guitar Center could be. And I just know that is not the Guitar Center experience that all consumers get to have. But I get to have it, so I'm pretty chuffed about that. I keep looking at like Guitar Center, and then I think about places like Barnes and Noble, and you have so much floor space, you have so much room, and you have warehouses and distribution, and each one of your stores is a distribution point. And it's just kind of surprising to me that more of these companies haven't leveraged this more like how Apple treats the Apple stores. Yes, the Apple stores are consumer places. People go and hang out and they get their iPad repaired, but really it's usually just exchanged for a refurb or something like that. But then when they're shipping product, those stores are one of the resources that help manage distribution and shipping goods and making this stuff faster. It's just unfortunate to me. I go inside a Barnes & Noble and I really feel like there's this huge missed opportunity to turn a Barnes & Noble into something a little bit more like a Best Buy. Think about all of the retail spots that are getting rid of things like DVDs and Blu-rays, right? Well, you go into a Barnes & Noble and there's almost always this kind of like empty media section where no one's really shopping in there. But that's an opportunity to craft sort of an aficionado experience. Like vinyl is selling really well in an enthusiast market. I think Blu-rays, and especially these new 4K Blu-rays, are going to be the movie equivalent of vinyl. So what if you worked out strategic partnerships, kind of like how Best Buy will set up kiosks? Like there's an Apple section in a Best Buy. I have to believe money is being exchanged between Apple and Best Buy to facilitate that. Well, what if you opened up some of the floor space on a Barnes & Noble for home theater? And you really had people there that were knowledgeable and you could invest in some of that information and consumers could go and get better or hands-on experiences. Like think about all the headphones I talk about that you don't get to put your ears in. So you're trying to trust a YouTube reviewer and their opinion on, well, the difference between ribbon headphones and planar magnetics. Or you could go to a Barnes & Noble or a Guitar Center and put your ears in something and then talk to someone who's just got a kiosk full of exotic headphones and speakers and then get information would be so incredible. And all of these companies instead, I went to a I went to a Barnes & Noble. It's not the nicer one near me. Where were we? It was one of our trips back to Albuquerque, and it's the Barnes & Noble in the mall. And the entire media section was completely empty, and it was kind of taped off. And it was it was just open floor space that they were using to store all the stuff that they were going to be sending back to distributors. So damaged books, books that didn't sell, books that had gone on clearance, stacks, like ugly flea market-y stacks of DVDs and stuff. Instead of storing that in the back, we just had it open on the floor. Look at all of our failure. Look at all of the things that people didn't buy. Look at all of this empty space in a huge cavernous book media warehouse. It was shocking. George Wyndham, that's Guitar Center Pro. It makes me really sad, and I think it definitely speaks to. I've been saying this so much, but even in these situations, it's just a lack of executive leadership. It's a lack of executive vision, and now people are out of jobs, and now we lose a resource, and now we lose something that was kind of fun, and I think it's coming to a market where, like, for millennials and Gen Z and Gen Alpha, the novelty of a toy store would be incredible. Think of my daughter has never been to a toy store. Well, I take that back. There was one that failed in a little outdoor mall. It was like a mom and pop boutique-y wooden toys and puzzles and things. It was really kitsch. It was cute. We went every single time we went to that open air mall, and then 6 months later it was gone and it totally failed. But like, she's never, Toys R Us disappeared, KB Toys disappeared. She's never been in a store that focuses on selling toys to kids. And I know that's crass consumerism, but I also think there's something really sad about that. The closest she's experienced to something like that is the toy aisle at a Target, or going to a Lego store in the mall. And it's not a toy store, but she gets to see all these Legos. She gets to play with Legos. It's great. She had a fun time playing with Legos. But there is no FAO Schwartz here. She does not know what that's like. I have so many memories of going to KB in the mall, and she doesn't get to have any of that. So this podcast is running crazy long, even though I don't have voice to really keep up with it. Go Starscream, you guys should come to Canada. Toys R Us is still alive here, as for most of the other parts of the world. Again, it's America. Our version of capitalism seems to destroy more companies than it really seems to empower. That's funny. It's almost like we're trying to consolidate into just a core group of monopolistic businesses. That's weird. It seems very un-American. I don't know. Share some thoughts in the comments. I do want to touch on this because we talked about it on Best of Our Week. And then we also talked about it on the podcast with Sam and Joe. Apple is beginning their apology tour for going mask off and telling consumers the truth about what Apple really cares about. Apple is not the friendly, nice, artist-friendly, it just works, think different company. They are desperate to appease shareholders that they are not losing the AI race, and their most recent commercial for the iPad was an unmitigated disaster. So now Apple's on an apology tour to try and rectify one of the darkest, dystopian, and most significant missteps in Apple messaging I think the company has ever demonstrated. I've seen many, many people that have commented directly and replied to things that I've said and point out, well, I just don't see what the big deal is. And that's fine. You don't have to read into it anything that you don't want to. It's kind of the whole point of marketing and advertising. If you agree with Apple's message, then that's fine. You can agree with Apple's message. But the fact that now we're seeing these articles and we're seeing, so this was this was the article that I'm sharing is from CNBC, written up by Kif Leswig. Apple apologizes for iPad Pro ad showing hydraulic press destroying guitars and piano. It's more than that. To me, this is a very clear pandering to the population of people Apple cares the most about. Apple cares the most about their shareholders and investors. They are a multi-trillion-dollar brand. They've slid. Sorry about that. They've slid behind Microsoft as the most profitable company on the market speculation of AI. I believe the server-side rush for AI services is going to prove to be another tech fad, if not another tech rug pull, like NFTs and the explosion of cryptocurrencies in an unregulated market. I don't think AI in the way that Google and Microsoft are trying to present it is really a sustainable business model. Not in any kind of direct consumer fashion where you're spending billions, hundreds of billions of dollars across the industry to make these data centers to sell subscription services to consumers for like 10 bucks a month does not seem to be a way to generate profits. You can bump up revenues and maybe people get excited about that, but I don't think that's sustainable. But right now, shareholders care that Apple iPhone sales slipped last quarter. iPad sales have been slipping for, I think, 2 years now that we've seen some sort of just general decrescendo on iPad sales. Someone please correct me on that. I probably have that wrong. But recently, iPad sales haven't been doing well because they haven't released a new iPad in a while. And in releasing new iPad Pros, the main talking point wasn't more compute power. It was that we're using the M4 first in an iPad to tell you about AI. That is the main talking point from Apple right now. We're not losing AI. Actually, we're the best at AI. Think about the M3 launch in the new MacBooks. AI, AI, AI. Look at the M4 in the iPads. AI, AI, AI. So when you view it in that context, Apple is taking the mask off and telling us this is a commercial for our shareholders to know we're serious about AI, and taking a dark, grungy, dirty industrial aesthetic and putting happy music behind that aesthetic in kind of an analog horror discordant combination of image and audio is a very Fallout thing to do also, which is hilarious that like Apple is kind of aligning themselves with the image of Vault Tech from Fallout. That's the look they're going for. And then smashing all of these tools that artists use to create, that humans use to create, at a time where they're talking up nothing but AI, is a unsettling proposition for people who really invest in their artistic talent and invest in their artistic education. And it's a bad look for a company that has built so many feels on, we're the brand for the misfits. We think different. It's us versus them. And it's just shocking to me that this ad in its public incarnation made it through, because this has now come full circle. 40 years later, the 1984 Super Bowl commercial, the 1984 commercial from Apple, showed a world dominated by IBM of a dark, dirty, industrial aesthetic. And a beautiful, pristine, blonde athlete comes running through this dark, dreary, everyone thinks alike. Everyone is beholden to Big Brother. Everyone is dirty and dingy in this industrial wasteland dystopia. And she throws a hammer into Big Brother's face. 40 years later, Apple has now characterized themselves as the dark, grungy, industrial, authoritarian company. We've come full circle. Apple is telling you the truth of who they are. And executives at Apple thought this commercial would be a good idea because Apple is too big to care about their actual customers. They take their customers for granted and they're trying to appease their shareholders. So, like I said, I've been talking this out. I talked it out with TK. I've talked it out with Sam and Joe. And I finally kind of put all the words together into that diatribe that I just did right there and why this has mattered to me. From being an Apple product specialist where I used to work that DOE contract all those years ago and having been an insufferable Apple fanboy back in the day, it makes me really sad because it seems every major step in the post-Steve Jobs era, Apple has walked another step away from what I care about. Every time I get excited about something Apple, like the Apple Watch or the M series processors, Apple then does something that makes sure I cannot be a customer of theirs. I really do want to try a MacBook, but there is no way I'm giving this company money in its current incarnation. And this, to me, again, speaks of a lack of executive vision, a lack of executive leadership. This is a company that is struggling to find what comes next. We know there are going to be more significant downturns in the smartphone market, in the tablet market, in the consumer electronics space, and especially when we can more easily repair our gadgets, there is going to be even less incentive for consumers to flip their phones every 2 or 3 years. We're going to see people really trying to push, you promised me 5 years of updates, you promised me 7 years of updates. That's going to be a bigger downturn in the hardware in hardware sales. And Apple is really going to feel the sting on that because so much of Apple's fan base is built up on this keeping up with the Joneses, the emotional feel, the green bubble versus blue bubble, all of that nonsense. You don't want Apple consumers rationally thinking about their purchases. It takes away some of that autonomy that Apple executives are counting on. So Apple thought this commercial was going to be a good idea, and it was going to speak to shareholders and tell people about all their AI plans. They couldn't foresee that this would backfire with the artistic communities that they're trying to sell these products to. Is just incredible. Super Wario Brother, a first-time chat on welcome to the Twitch. Super Wario Brother says, the hero eventually becomes the villain, shaking my head. Yeah, George Whittam, I don't see any other interpretation on this that makes sense to me. George says, you nailed it there. Apple really blew it. Hold on, let me take a sip of water. Pup on Tech, you were meant to bring balance to the Force, and he did. He brought the balance to the dark side. Kapakash, what do you mean, Juan? Apple has over 95% customer satisfaction. I know. Pup on Tech. Well, Mr. Tim Apple is a numbers guy, not exactly the visionary. I mean, again, I'm not surprised. Apple was more exciting with a megalomaniac narcissist at the head of the company who demanded a specific type of consumer electronics vision be delivered by smarter engineers and software developers. I'm not trying to deify Steve Jobs because I think he was probably a complicated and somewhat terrible human. Definitely not someone I ever would have wanted to work with or work for. But Tim Cook is an operations guy. So no big surprise, he has made Apple incredibly wealthy and successful. But that's the issue, is who's at the top of Apple now has any vision? Whether or not you like Johnny Ive's design, he at least approached that with a passion for design. I don't know the names of people at the top of Apple that I feel are delivering the vision of where does Apple go in a post-smartphone economy. It's an interesting position for Apple to be in because it's a more successful version of what happened to Apple when the board kicked Steve Jobs out. They tried to diversify and find all these other markets, and they made cameras and printers and all this other garbage, and then Steve Jobs came in and nuked all of those projects again and streamlined Apple, and it made Apple more successful, and that helped bolster the confidence. Now, I feel Apple has become this consumer juggernaut, but they've just been coasting on being a consumer juggernaut, and they aren't. It's not going to be mixed reality. That's not going to dig them out of this hole. They don't have an AI play. They shuttered their self-driving car division. What comes after the iPhone to keep Apple successful and to keep the confidence and market speculation of Apple stock as high as they can? And I don't have an answer for that, but I'm not an executive at Apple getting paid millions of dollars to pontificate and be the big ideas guy. Tim Cook is not a big ideas guy. He just makes sure that they get preferred manufacturing in China, and he's really good at muscling out competition. But that's not vision. that's executing on market realities of the moment, but not setting the company up for future success. JJ4840. Wait, is Juan streaming on LinkedIn? Yeah, I think my LinkedIn profile has been co-streaming this for a couple months now. If not, I think about a year now. Yeah, I've been doing this for a bit. Jonathan Blade, if you've ever listened to Alex Lindsay wax poetic about Apple, it doesn't seem that they take their customers for granted. They are only gambling with mindshare of non-Apple future Apple customers. I disagree. I mean, someone else can wax poetic, but when we see anti-consumer business practices like making iPhones harder to repair and serializing parts, when we see the removal of the headphone jack, when we see design language changes like getting rid of Touch ID and the home button for swipes and Face ID, when we see all of these structural and architectural changes to their products, starting MacBooks off with 8 gigabytes of RAM and still charging these premium tier prices, but trying to act like they've got an accessible lower model, I think we've seen Apple does not care. They are too big to care as an organization. And they take for granted a core consumer demographic that will never leave their products and services, that will never leave their ecosystem. And that is because of monopolistic business practices, antitrust, anti-consumer business practices. So many people that you know that who would probably be better off with less expensive gadgets because they don't need what Apple is selling them on, but they'll never leave the Mac ecosystem. They'll never leave the iOS ecosystem. That to me is when we get to an advertisement like this Crush commercial, this is the manifestation of that corporate apathy to their end users being publicly displayed in a piece of marketing, where Apple marketing has almost always been spot on in the moment, hearing their customers and at least showing them or presenting to them the stuff that their customers want to see. This ad was never going to satisfy their customers, and it made it through in a big, high-profile iPad launch right before we're about to get Windows on ARM hardware. So what is an iPad Pro against a Microsoft Surface Pro with an X Elite chip? I'm sorry, if you're going to sell me on a creative tablet, I think I want the one with the full operating system, not the one with the mobile operating system that does the AI. I think they're in a precious position right now, and unfortunately, they're responding to the wrong audiences. They're responding to their shareholders. They're not responding to their end users or their customers. Let's see. Get this out of the way. Pup on tech. But one, it's a different type of RAM. It's unified memory. You clearly do not understand how much better our memory management is. I'm willing to give you, people who say stuff like that, I'm willing to give them that Mac OS does seem to run better on 8 gigabytes of RAM than Windows can on 8 gigabytes of RAM. Doesn't matter. If you're fine with the experience of 8 gigabytes of RAM on a MacBook, you probably would have been fine with like $500 Chromebook Plus. So I have strong feels about this because my background is in casting and advertising and marketing, and I've never seen Apple make a misstep this bad. It was fun just ribbing Apple on what's a computer, because I've been desperately trying to get people to think about their phones and tablets as computers, not as entertainment appliances. So I felt like that was a misstep, but it was a funny one. And it did kind of speak to just a change in how we talk about consumer products. And I don't think Apple was way off the mark. I just thought it was kind of a funny little misstep. This Crush commercial is full mask off, as far as I'm concerned. Apple is the authoritarian, antitrust tech entity that they once railed against. You cannot keep trying to convince your consumers that you're the plucky upstart alternative when you are the authoritarian IBM replacement of your era. And that's what this commercial demonstrated to me in spades. So it's a bummer. All right. I got some other stories in here, but I kind of want to just move on. Yeah, I'm gonna skip. I'm gonna mention these, and I'm still gonna link them in the show notes. But it just makes me sad. EA is looking to put in-game ads in AAA games. We'll be very thoughtful as we move into that, says EA's CEO. I'm going to be linking this from Joey Morales at Tom's Hardware. I've almost certainly mispronounced your first name, Morales. But I don't know. I think we would all agree that that's a bummer and stupid. And I haven't given EA any money in a long time. And it doesn't seem like I'll be giving EA any money soon. As I build up little mini PCs for gaming, and I'm playing way more on my Steam Deck than I do on my beefy rig here. Yeah, I'm not thrilled about that. I feel like we can kind of move on from that one. JJ4884, in-game ads like billboards with actual sponsorships. If it's a racing game and you pay for digital signage in a racing game, I think that's pretty cool. But I think what they're talking about is like, instead of getting a loading screen in this game, it stops to play an ad. So I stopped playing Street Fighter V because even though I had paid for like the super ultra deluxe edition with all the characters and stuff, and I spent a lot of money on that, every time I would start a round, it would advertise some other Capcom game or event. It's like, oh, there's a Street Fighter Championship coming up. Like, I just want to play the game. And you can't tell me that my system at the time with the 2080 Ti is struggling to load a Street Fighter match. So this is horse poop. And Marie and I went back to playing Street Fighter 4. Like, it was garbage. So I kind of feel like that's more what EA was looking to do. Is like, to interrupt gameplay before you can get to the next part of this gameplay, we're going to show you a commercial or an ad. I think racing games actually do probably a lot of business just on that back end of sponsorships and product placement and stuff like that. I don't think that's what EA is talking about. But we don't have to spend a lot of time on that because EA be doing what the EA thing is, and I don't know. I've been really disappointed in their microtransactions and enhanced monetization of other platforms and services. Another quick follow-up that I want folks to keep an eye on. This one from Javier Espinoza at the Financial Times, but republished on Ars Technica. Microsoft to face antitrust case over Teams. This is going to be a big deal in the EU, as we also look at the DOJ case here against Apple, wrapping up the DOJ case against Google, and increased regulatory scrutiny. Microsoft risks up fines of up to 10% of its global annual turnover if found to have breached the EU competition law. And this is, again, in relation to Teams. They were sued by, it wasn't Zoom, who was it? Slack. Now, Slack is owned by Salesforce. In 2020, and we talked about this back in 2020, there was some kerfluffle over how Microsoft was incorporating Teams into their other business products. And Slack said that that was anti-competitive. And instead of going through the entire legal regulatory process, Microsoft separated Teams from the rest of their business offerings. Haha, I caught that cough. But now, even with that, there is still a regulatory investigation about to happen as to how Teams operates. And this is an important part of the article. I want to see if I can find it again. It would end a decade-long truce between EU regulators and the US tech company after a series of competition probes that ended in 2013. The EU then issued a €560 million fine against Microsoft for failure to comply with a decision over the bundling of the Internet Explorer browser with its Windows operating system. So we talk about that Oh, the EU sued Microsoft over including a browser. And Microsoft was supposed to give people an option of browsers. And so then they did that. That full case, the ramifications of that did not finish playing out until 2013, where Microsoft was still shown to have not really complied with the instructions of EU regulators in a very similar way to how Apple really isn't complying. It's a malicious compliance from Apple over things like giving customers a choice of browser on the iPhone. Well, you don't get that choice on the iPhone until you push the Safari button. You're already going to Safari to then get a little pop-up saying, "Oh, do you want to try another browser, I guess?" Oh, is that like something you want to do, or do you just want to go to Safari because you pushed the Safari button? That is not the appropriate response to this new regulation. So we got to keep an eye on this because this Teams case is also in a very interesting way. Microsoft has got to show that they are playing ball with these new regulations. And just like my criticisms of Apple and just like my criticisms of Google and Amazon, Microsoft has a very storied history with regulators where we can kind of make fun and minimize the impact on this kind of stuff. Oh, they sued them over a web browser. But that has a huge impact on consumer behavior. And that's what we need to kind of stay ahead of. So I'll be really interested to see how this one plays out. Again, read the Financial Times article on Ars Technica, but this is one that's going to be playing out heavily over the next couple years. Okay, we're going to hit one more story here just real quick. And then JFR, this is exactly what we're going to be moving on to. JFR says, "Hey, Juan, do you think the Pixel 8a will be a good upgrade for my mom's Pixel 4 XL, or will the Pixel 8 be a better upgrade?" So we're definitely going to be chatting about that in just a minute. But I'm going to take one more drink of water while I screen share this, because this one is just interesting to me that it's taken a big tech company this long to really try again. Microsoft readies launch of its own mobile app store, written up by Ali Rees over at readwrite.com. Microsoft announced this week they plan on launching their own mobile game app store to compete with Apple and Google. This is fascinating to me. Epic Games went in and sued Google and sued Apple over what I feel is correctly labeled anti-competition business practices over how those two huge tech companies control the app markets for their phones' operating systems. Google is actually in the better position because Android still allows for things like sideloading apps and installing other app stores. I use F-Droid. You could still sideload the Amazon App Store if you wanted to get apps directly from Amazon for Android devices. I'm not sure how much longer that's going to work if Amazon is really trying to make their own tablets and e-readers less compatible with Android as a whole. But you can still do it. And I love bringing up the old Humble Bundle. You used to be able to buy Android games from Humble Bundle, and Humble Bundle had their own app updating service so that you could get updates to those games as those were published. It is shocking to me that Microsoft hasn't tried to do this until now, and it guts me because Microsoft just recently canceled support for the Windows subsystem for Android. If this is a glimmer of any kind of hope, I would really hope that this browser-based store, because they're not even making it an app. So it's not going to be an app that you can get from Google. So you're going to go to microsoftmobilegamestore.com. That's not the real web address. You can buy a game for your Android device and probably sideload it directly through that browser interaction is the plan that they're going for right now. But to me, this is like such a critical mistime because if Microsoft were keeping up support for the Windows subsystem for Android and they had a browser-based mobile game store, then you would also be able to directly load good mobile games into Windows and play them directly natively. Not natively, I mean, that's an application layer and blah, 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 blah. It's emulated support, but directly on your Windows 11 system. Especially having run the Windows subsystem for Android on Windows on ARM gear, it was phenomenal performance. Like my Robo Ancala was outpacing, at the time it would have been the Galaxy Tab S8. Like it was great. Side-loading Android apps for that. It was awesome. So I'm kind of shocked. Like Epic has been struggling to kind of figure out a market. Mobile gaming is huge revenue. I don't love all the gotcha mechanics and microtransactions and all that BS. But we still run a list on the Patreon. As games come in, I update this Word doc. And it's got a bunch of premium games. You have to pay for them, but they're just really good games that you can play on your phone. A lot of them are console and PC ports, little indie titles. Now the Netflix catalog has been getting some more stuff. It's some really good stuff there too. But just, it's harder to find, but there are incredible games to play on mobile. I just feel like this is again, Microsoft is this huge, bloated, enormous tech conglomerate full of all these little positions and power brokers and departments. And this is exactly the kind of thing where if one side had talked to the other for the last couple of years, they could have had this as a strategy. Oh, look, you like playing Android, you like playing mobile games on your tablets. Well, we've got a Surface Pro. And here, you install this app and it just installs the Android subsystem for Windows. And then it's just an app like any other app in your app drawer. You don't have to launch an Android emulator. It just loads the app like it was a native Windows program and you're off and running. And why? Why did they only staple that to the Amazon App Store? That makes no sense to me. They could have reached out to developers directly and mobile game distributors directly and said, just put the game in the Microsoft store. You don't have to change anything. The Windows subsystem for Android is running Android 13. So you just take the APK that you would have given to Google, and then you just put it in the Microsoft store, and you know what? We'll charge 5% less. So if anyone does buy your game on the Microsoft App Store, we'll take less of a cut than Google takes for that same game, and it's going to run on any Windows device running Windows 11. How is that not the business model? How does Microsoft fail that bad? It blows my mind. So, I'll be really curious to see what this mobile game store has to offer. If it's another avenue for me to play Halo Spartan Assault, it's one of my all-time favorite classic twin-stick shooters, so I'll buy it again. I've played it on so many different computers and platforms. I'm game. I love Spartan Assault. So we do want to wrap this up talking about Google I/O. The last 20 minutes here as we get into the podcast. Google I/O and the Pixel 8a. JJ4884 is saying right now you can get the Pixel 7 Pro on Woot for $479. And that's a pretty darn good buy. The Pixel 7 Pro, I think, is aging pretty decent. I mean, it's aging pretty well. There is some Tensor 2 battery life. It does run a little toasty, but it's a better performing option than, say, like the Pixel Fold running the Tensor 2 also. So for $479, that's pretty good. That seems to be, as we look at the Pixel 8a, and I talked about this a little with Sam and Joe yesterday. We got questions from people just saying like, well, does this phone even make sense? Or is the Pixel lineup getting too complicated as, you know, this is a $500 Pixel. It's $499. Who would buy the Pixel 8a over just getting a regular Pixel 8? Because the Pixel 8 you can get on sale for about the same price. So, I appreciate that, but I have a lot of eye-rolling criticism for how techies compare prices on consumer electronics. For some reason, when we're techies, we love doing this thing where we compare the device that we want to be the winner on a sale price or a trade-in price against the full MSRP of the product that we want to be kind of the loser. So if I pull this up right now, and I'm going to go to thestore.thegoogle.com, and I pull up the Pixel 8. Let's check out the Pixel 8. I'm going to screen share this again. So here's the Pixel 8a from $499. And then here's the Pixel 8 from $699. I feel that is reasonable. All of the changes that you see on the Pixel 8a, I understand why there's a $200 difference between those two phones. If we're going to compare fair, we compare on MSRP. Google is making a claim. The Pixel 8 is worth $700. The Pixel 8a is worth $500. Now, what do we know is the reality of our smartphone market? Prices drop, these things devalue. You can find refurbs and used models for a lot cheaper, and then they will go on sale, where you can pick up a new phone on a sale or a trade-in or a promotional deal for less than the MSRP. So yes, you can very easily find the Pixel 8 for a lot cheaper. What I don't understand in the people that are kind of criticizing the two phones being so close is why they seem to be purposely ignoring that the Pixel 8a will eventually also go on promotional deals and sales. I got to take a drink of water here. The full MSRP of the Pixel 8a is $500. Do we expect it to stay there forever? Do we not expect that the 8a will go on sale? Do we not expect that the 8a will also become one of those phones that you get for free on some kind of like trade-in deal with a carrier agreement? So that I find it galling how techies always kind of race to the bottom. It should have been cheaper is like meaningful commentary in a tech review, which is never meaningful commentary in a tech review. And we're always moving the goalposts on what is the perceived value or what do we think is going to be the better buy. The 8a is coming shortly before we're going to start getting announcements on all of the Pixel 9s. And I think we're in for a trio. We're going to get a Pixel 9, a Pixel 9 Pro, or a Plus or an Ultra, and then a Pixel 9 Fold. And I think we're not going to get a Fold 2, we're going to get a Pixel 9 Fold. That distinction matters. The Pixel Fold was an older chip than the Pixel 8, and it came out in the same year as the Pixel 8. I think Google is going to rectify that, so we're not going to get a Fold 2 with a Tensor 3. We're going to get a Pixel 9 Fold, and they all launch at the same time. Pixel 9, Pixel 9 Pro, and Pixel Fold. I think we're going to get a trio. That's my prediction. I don't have any other particularly grand insights on Google's marketing or strategy for the Pixel team. But this is like what's so interesting to me is the Pixel 8a has a less expensive build material, but a build material, and I'm seeing it in the comments here too, like JJ48 and Pup on Tech. Plastic is a great material to make the back of your phone. That it's a really good idea. The Lumias had it right way back in the day on Windows Phone. So depending on your preferences and whether or not you want to use a phone with or without a case, that could actually be a benefit, not a drawback. But we do need to acknowledge that molded plastic is cheaper than making a glass back for these devices. It definitely camera compromises on the sensor technologies, but I think the sensor in the 8A is going to be a great daily driver point and shoot solution, just like the 7A was a great daily driver point and shoot solution. And then there are going to be other just architectural and structural differences like screens and bezels and all that other stuff that we like to get hyped up about. But if you can get a Pixel 8 for close to the same price as the Pixel 8a, I think you're in for a nicer overall experience. That new main, not new, the larger main camera sensor, if you care about the photography and the composition, shallower depth of field and those kinds of things, then yeah, it makes sense to step up to the Pixel 8. But also, the price of the Pixel 8 on sale being so close to the 8A would mean to me that at some point, very soon, you should be able to get an 8A for a lot cheaper. So then it means you got something that is really close to the performance of the more premium phone, but you're going to spend a lot less money on it. The 8A makes a lot of sense when viewed through that context. And then also, you're buying in on the Pixel 8 right before we get to the Pixel 9 launch. So depending on the timing and whether or not you like to be on the pulse, the 8A represents the more refined transition for the Tensor 3 era, coming in at the lower price point right before we get ready for Android 15, Google I/O, and the leaks and the pre-release hype that'll build for the Pixel 9 series of devices. So, Kapakash is saying we're going to get 4. Let's see. Kapakash is saying we're going to get a 9, a 9 Pro, a 9 Pro XL, and a 9 Fold. That's a quartet. That's a lot. I'll be curious to see. I think Google's strategy has been a little confusing because the Pixel 8 is not an 8 Pro. So it's kind of like if you look at all the iPhones, you've got an iPhone 15, iPhone 15 Plus, iPhone 15 Pro, and iPhone 15 Pro Max. And it's kind of like Google said, we're going to do the iPhone 15 and the iPhone 15 Pro Max. And that's kind of what we have for Pixels. We have the Pixel 8, but it's not an 8 Pro. And then we have the 8 Pro, which is really the XL version of the phone. It's the bigger version of the phone. So I don't know if we're going to keep a smaller 9 and 9 Pro. If we're also launching a 9 Fold, my prediction is that we're going to get a Trio. But I totally see where some people think that we're going to get like the entire spectrum, the quartet of different devices. Hold on, let me get some more water here, man. I got to wrap this show up because I have almost no voice left. So Pup on Tech is asking, are the next Pixels still running on Exynos-based Tensor? I don't know. So I think originally the rumor was Tensor 3 was going to be our transition back to TSMC. I saw a lot of chatter that Google was actively shopping SoC designs, and I think they were even doing some prototyping. What was the other company? Not TSMC, is it SMIC? Someone please let me know. The other Chinese chip manufacturing firm. I want to say it was SMIC or SIMC. I can't remember what the abbreviation is. But right now, we're going to be hearing a lot about Google's data center project. If you've been keeping pace with some of the silicon news, obviously some of the big points have been like Qualcomm is announcing X Elite and X Plus. And those chips are going to be going into Windows on ARM machines. I just caught a press release while we've been doing the show. I just caught a press release. It looks like MediaTek might be partnering with NVIDIA. This is like deep in the weeds, silicon industry, not confirmed that I've found yet, but MediaTek might be tapping NVIDIA to look at a 2025 launch for their own desktop and laptop chips, which could be very exciting. So instead of the Mali GPU, we'd be getting an NVIDIA GPU or better support for discrete GPUs with a MediaTek chip. And if you've been using, if you ever get to see a Dimensity 9300 in action, this chip, strike five. This chip is ridiculously too powerful for a phone. If I could just take the Dimensity 9300 out of this phone and put active cooling on it in a laptop shell, it would immediately best a 12th gen Intel Core i7 U series processor. I have a rugged laptop with a 12th gen Core i7, and my Vivo benches noticeably more powerful than that 12th gen i7. So, sorry, you got to dig a little deeper here because this is all in the speculative, we don't know, we're trying to keep abreast of what's happening in the silicon industry. But I don't believe that Google's new data center chip is being fabbed by Samsung. I think their data center chip that they've been talking about recently, they just announced in a blog post. There's very little information on it, but I think it's going to be fabbed by TSMC. If that's the case, that could mark our transition. And I think that means we might be on for Tensor 4 being the first version that would come from TSMC. If that plays out, we have a lot of uncertainty. One of the issues that I think people run into the most with Tensor and with Pixels isn't necessarily the performance of the chip as much as it is the inefficiencies of Samsung's radio compared against Qualcomm and MediaTek radios. Samsung is easily a generation behind MediaTek in making a good, power-efficient cell phone radio. They've gotten better. Tensor 3 is a marked improvement over Tensor 2, but it's those Samsung components that are really dragging us down. It's those Exynos parts that are really holding us back and running our phones hotter and getting us less battery life. So there's a lot of unknowns there. Like if you go to a TSMC fabbed chip, who does Google turn to for the radio management? Do we still have an Exynos radio design fabbed by TSMC? This stuff gets really messy and really complicated. Because I think in part, Google wants to get away from relying overly on Qualcomm for a lot of these solutions. But maybe you do. I think a MediaTek radio in a TSMC fabbed chip with Google's architecture and design and their NPU, would be a significant step up over what we've gotten from Samsung, the Google-Samsung relationship. So, sorry, that was an easy question to ask, and I don't have a solid answer for you. The rumors, I think, were pointing to Tensor 4 maybe being that transition, so we'll have to see. But it would be really nice if we could get away from the last remnants of that Samsung-Google exclusivity. I can't tell you how much nicer the Pixel Watch 2 is over the Pixel Watch 1. A part of that is refining the manufacturing. It's just a better built watch in general. But then also it's for no fancy tricks, no dual processors, no co-processors, no dual display technologies. It's not a watch I absolutely need to charge every 20 hours. And the Pixel Watch 1, not great. Not good. Pixel Watch 2, it's a daily watch. It makes so much more sense. Major difference between the two? Qualcomm chip instead of that dopey Exynos. So it's only looking up from here. But I don't know for certain that Tensor 4 is going to be the first TMC joint. Pop on Tech, I don't know that this makes the most sense. 5 products makes the most sense. Small, regular, small, pro, big, regular, big, pro, fold. I think it makes the most sense in terms of looking like Apple. I think it makes the most sense in that you can clearly say this is the regular model and this is the pro model and these have these features and those have those features. But because I actually think like one little phone, one big phone is the most streamlined version that you can make. And I think makes the most sense to consumers that there's a little version and a big version and not trying to confuse the consumer with too many stratifications, too many spectrums of devices. But I think Google has not done a good job of advertising that there's an A series, a number series, and a pro series. And that I think a lot of people look at the 8 and 8 Pro as being of the same tier. And that's a problem of marketing. That's a problem of consumer education. Oh, hey, Joe saying, hey, cool people, what up? But Pop on Tech, yeah, MediaTek and NVIDIA would be crazy. And I bet you MediaTek can go into that better because I think MediaTek has a lot more experience in making chips for things like Chromebooks and understanding the power restrictions on mobile computers than Samsung did when Samsung tried to partner with AMD. I think that relationship is properly dead now. So Samsung and AMD did not pan out like how people were hoping it would. But NVIDIA has a huge history of making mobile devices and gaming devices, and MediaTek has a lot of experience in making laptop chips and tablet chips. And if the two can get together, and even like say you could do this where you have the MediaTek chip with a Mali GPU and then an NVIDIA Co GPU, and like in the how a lot of our laptops work, that immediately is scary competition for Qualcomm's launch window of Windows on ARM devices for X Elite. That right there, we're talking about Windows on ARM. Can we make a Windows on ARM gaming solution? If you're giving me Dimensity 9300 style performance, all big cores, big X4 cores with big A700 series cores, and then it's got a dedicated NVIDIA GPU, and we can still hit the same or a similar power envelope as an AMD APU, like in the Steam Deck, that would be insane. You could start chipping away at like PS4 Pro to PS5 level performance in something that's running like under 40 watts. Like it would comfortably top off on a smartphone charger, but outpower a PS5. I want it so bad. Yeah, George, exactly. I think MediaTek with NVIDIA would make an awesome product. The two bring completely different disciplines to the table, and they're puzzle pieces. Like, they actually complement what the other isn't as good at. Like, I'm sorry, like NVIDIA Tegra kind of failed in the market for some good reasons. NVIDIA was really good at making one part of this equation, and I would say the weakest part of the Dimensity 9300 is the sustained graphics performance. It's still very good, but if you're gaming on a phone, I think you get better sustained performance on Qualcomm's Adreno than you do on MediaTek's Mali. But if MediaTek and NVIDIA are working together and I can get that chip in a Steam Deck style shell, that is an order of magnitude performance improvement for portable gaming, handheld consoles. That is an order of magnitude improvement for all of these little like mini PCs that I've loved reviewing. If I can just put an ARM chip in here, and I can go from a 120 watt power brick to a 60 watt power brick and get a performance improvement, is I want so bad. I want so bad. I'm telling you, I have a second generation Threadripper with an RTX 4070 Ti. I am starting to see performance numbers that suggest that when we get updates to things like DaVinci Resolve, I can go from a 1200 watt power supply in this massive chassis workstation that I've got under my desk down to a computer that at peak is going to draw about 100 watts. 1/10 the amount of electricity for roughly the same performance. I don't need the performance improvement. I'm good. The system is not maxed out for what I need to do. I don't know what, something is vibrating on my desk and it's driving me crazy. I don't need a crazy uplift. But then I would have it in a system that then I could just unplug a couple cables and put it in my backpack and still have that kind of performance on battery life. Oh, I want that so bad. I want it so bad. Al Sabakli, will Qualcomm ARM chips talk to NVIDIA GPUs in the same system? We don't have an answer on that. And I don't believe the first generation of Windows on ARM laptops is going to play around with discrete GPUs. TK and I were sitting in a press briefing at Qualcomm headquarters asking a Qualcomm engineer questions. And one of the questions was, will we see X Elite work with other GPUs? Excuse me. Sorry, that's 6. And the engineer, like, he's in a flow. He's just answering these questions. He takes that question. He goes, you know, there's no technical reason why we couldn't add another GPU to X Elite. And then he just stopped talking. And the whole room went silent for, I don't know, like what felt like an eternity, but was probably more like 10 seconds. And then he just went, okay, next question. And so I think it's technically possible, but I don't think we're going to see discrete GPUs in this first generation of systems. And see, Nick Gay saying, I thought it was going to be Tensor 5. And I think during Tensor 2, we were all saying, I think it's going to be Tensor 4. So we keep kind of bumping that outlay. Tensor 4 might end up being the last gen with Samsung. We'll have to see. If we can see some of the fabrication improvements, maybe it won't be too bad. But really, I think the thing that's still going to hold us back and still erode the battery life isn't going to be if the CPU and GPU cores are good. I think it's going to be whether or not the radio continues to draw more power at similar performance to a Qualcomm radio or a MediaTek radio. Oh, Pup on Tech, absolutely. I think the Steam Deck finally proved that consumers care about power consumption in a roundabout way without them realizing. And I mean, like, I'm definitely giving Steam a lot of credit here, but let's not ignore the GOAT. Let's not ignore the most profitable system of the last, almost 10 years has been the Nintendo Switch. Let's not ignore every time someone says, oh, I don't know about ARM chips for gaming. And you're like, yeah. But look at the ancient NVIDIA Tegra in the Nintendo Switch generating the most profitable consumer gaming experience I think the world has ever seen. I'm probably exaggerating, but it's up there. And yeah, that little Nintendo Switch chip is absolutely struggling and definitely showing its age. And we are overdue a Switch 2, but developers are still putting out games. Tears of the Kingdom definitely plays better in emulation on a beefy GPU, but it was designed to maximize the graphical capabilities of an ancient NVIDIA Tegra. So anyone who's like, oh, I don't know about gaming on a phone or a tablet or like an ARM chip is a moron. I'm telling you, like the Razer, that Razer Edge 5G, it was a little overpriced. I wish it were not based on the core configuration of a Snapdragon 888, but that thing is demonstrably more powerful than a Nintendo Switch. And you can play some phenomenal games on that thing and get better battery life than I can on my Steam Deck, which has a significantly larger battery. We are missing out by not supporting that kind of hardware and not getting more developers on board supporting ARM distribution or Linux distribution or just better support for these games on alternative form factors. I game almost never at this desk. Even when I run the game from my beefy workstation, I'm streaming that game to my Steam Deck or my Razer Edge, and I'm playing comfortably on the couch in the living room. And it is so nice. Jonathan Blade, absolutely. If the Switch can do Doom Eternal, it feels like other ARM developers aren't even trying. I'm telling you, I pick up a Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 or my Dimensity 9300, and I clip a little controller to this phone, and I fire up Alien Isolation, and I can play Alien Isolation at over 100 frames per second. And it's so pretty. And I can't do that on a Steam Deck. I can do that also on my workstation, but I am natively rendering that game with decent graphics, decent quality settings, chromatic aberration, motion blur, VSync, everything at over 100 frames per second on a phone. And that phone battery can now hang for a couple hours of gameplay in a game like Alien Isolation. Mwah. There are so many other games that would, again, you'd need some polish. You need to port it properly. The company that brought Alien Isolation to mobile has done a phenomenal job of updating Alien Isolation so that it runs well on new phones. That's not cheap. But this is, I think, one of the best last places to play a game like Alien Isolation. So I think this is about where we got to start kind of wrapping this up. I wanted to talk a little bit more about Google I/O, but I'm afraid that really what Google I/O is going to be is a keynote talking up Android 15, showing off the Pixel 8a, which is already in people's hands and reviews have already gone live. I don't have the phone. I might try to get the phone. I don't know if I'm going to get the phone. But I think it's going to be a lot of talk about Android 15, a lot of talk about the Pixel 8a, and then just like Apple with the M3 MacBooks and with the M4 iPad, just AI after AI after AI after AI. And I think we're coming to the peak of investor interest in AI. And I think we've already crested the consumer peak of AI. And unfortunately, now a lot of these other initiatives seem to have completely fallen apart. 2 years ago at AI, we saw Project Iris, a pair of glasses you put on your face, looked sleek, looked trim, looked like fashionable glasses that people would want to wear, and very streamlined for basic heads-up display interactions, speech-to-text translation. That's what I wanted. And then Apple showcased their mixed reality headset, which has flopped in the market and has done a ton of damage to mixed reality and VR because it didn't become the next bestest amazing thing that everyone wanted. And Samsung convinced Google to kill Project Iris to focus on copying Apple. And I put out a video on it saying that was a stupid thing to do. And a bunch of people, oh, Juan, what do you know? You don't know about, and Samsung is the bestest. And I was right. Because I'll be very surprised if we get 2 years later, if we get through this Google I/O and there's any mention of AR or VR or mixed reality. And look at all the things we've lost. Right now, you could be wearing a pair of sunglasses that puts a very simple smartwatch interface up at eye level. Google Glass was almost 13 years ago. Focals by North were 6 years ago. And we keep waiting to do the most reasonable next step to getting consumers into wearing face computers. And then we're shocked that, like, when some silly experiment prototype thing doesn't immediately sell like hotcakes, they're like, oh, see, no one wants to put a computer on their face. So I feel like we're probably not going to get a lot of insight on stuff like that. But I think over the course of Google I/O, I want to talk to TK about this because he is actually going to be there. He's going to be on the ground in person trying to check this out. I'm really curious to see what some of the actual developer conferences are like, because I want to see if we'll see improved tablet interactions for Android 15, if we'll finally start getting some traction on a desktop mode. I don't think this is any of the stuff that's going to be a part of the major keynote, but it's all the stuff that we care about in making a better product and making one compute purchase a better lifestyle companion, where a phone can plug into a monitor and then become kind of a mini desktop, or maybe you can plug it into a portable display and it offsets the need for a tablet, and we can expand on all of these AI capabilities in a larger screen. Something like that, I think, could go a little further in that kind of consumer conversation. So we'll be following up Google I/O on Thursday. Definitely check out the stream for Best of Our Week with TK and I, because TK will have a lot to share, I'm sure. And then I'm going to be around on social media, but I'll probably be lurking on streams from Gadget Goddess tomorrow. That's Kimmy's stream on Tuesday. Easy, the Tech Preacher, Easy Computer Solutions. Friday is LaShawn's stream. Nomad Tech Project on Sundays. El Jefe Reviews on Saturdays. So we've got a whole crew of people that are going to be streaming a lot over this week. And Google I/O, and we have like JoJo the Techie. I'm sure JoJo's going to be writing stuff. So keep an eye out for her articles and editorials. There's a ton. George, I'm sure, is going to be streaming and talking at some point about some of this gear too. And George, don't be afraid to like plug time and date for when you're going to be streaming next in the chat. So yeah, this is going to be a good week to chat some stuff out. And also we'll be following up on these stories next week for another episode of the STGQA podcast channel. Folks, thank you so much for bearing with me on sort of a reduced voice, lots of pauses and drinking water and coffee. And I coughed 6 whole times on mic, and that's just terrible. Those are rookie numbers. I got to get those numbers down. But I want you all to have an amazing week. This is going to be really fun. We're getting chatter on Pixel 8a. We've got a lot of laptop and desktop and silicon news that's going to be coming down the pipe. This summer is going to be really busy in a way that I haven't had as busy a summer in years past. So I'm really stoked for that. And the back to school season is going to be stupid once we start getting into like August and September. So I want everybody to have an amazing week. I want you to do awesome with your technology. I want you to be awesome with your technology. And I'll catch you back here. Oh, and most importantly, I want you to take care of yourself so that you can keep taking care of others. And you can continue to be the amazing tech neighbors that I know you are. Catch you back here next week for another episode. Take care. I love you all.